Welcome to our second episode. This is Cinematic Breakdown, and I'll be your omnipotent voice for the evening. Now, before we begin, fair warning to you all. This does contain spoilers. Nothing major, but spoilers nonetheless. If you hear me talking about a film that you have yet to see, and are the type to be bothered by such things, then this is your cue to tune out. Anyway, today we're going to discuss what I like to call acting from the back. While this is not a technical term by any means, it is something I've noticed is very hard to do and is very rarely done. Most actors are out of their element when they can't see the camera, and most directors need coverage of every little detail, or they'll cry themselves to sleep at night because how will the audience know where the phone came from if the character reaches down below frame and then brings up a phone? It'll confuse them. A real thing said to me by an actual director, by the way. Most actors lack the presence to be able to execute a nuanced performance without utilizing their facial features, and more often than not, just act as a placeholder for their partner in the scene while they wait for another take from their angle. And directors, they tend to either not notice this because they're looking at the face of the person they can see, or they actively choose to show you the scene from every single angle, trying to ensure that you miss nothing, and therefore leaving nothing to the imagination. But what they forget is that sometimes what you don't see is just as important as what you do. When done properly, acting with your back can heighten the performance to new levels and connect with the audience in a greater way. Acting with your back to the camera forms, for lack of a better term, a silhouette. Just as with an actual silhouette, the actor transcends from a mere human being to a work of human form and shape. Think of what you're looking at here. This may be a human being, but because of the high contrast nature of the silhouette, every movement becomes exaggerated and conveys a message, whether it's fearful, angry, sultry, or anything else. By the sheer nature of being a silhouette, every aspect of the actor is heightened, and although acting from the back may not be an actual technical silhouette, by turning your back on the camera, the same effect is achieved. There are three specific acting with the back scenes that I plan on discussing here. The first is very short. It's from the film Kill Bill, written and directed by Quentin Tarantino. In this scene, the actor in question is Daryl Hannah, not Uma Thurman, who's busy outshining Bender with her absolutely fantastic coma acting. The point of this scene is that Daryl and Uma are assassins. Daryl has been sent by the title character Bill to finish the job of killing Uma, which they had already tried and failed to do. While there, she gets a phone call from Bill telling her to abort the plan. On Daryl's end of things, for the majority of the call, we watch from behind as she stares out the window. The only thing we have to read her emotions are the way she moves her shoulders, tilts her head, and my absolutely favorite part of the scene, the way she moves her arms. Specifically, this one right here. Watch that again. You see that? The way she moves. We may not be able to see her face, but I know that every single one of you here was perfectly able to read her every expression, right down to how she rolled her eyes. In just a few seconds, with nothing but a few movements, she goes from calm to furious to indignant to remorseful, and we can see every emotion in her without ever seeing her. As an aside, I also feel it's fair to mention the hand of Bill in the same segment. It may not be a proper acting from the back example, but it is acting with raw movement and no facial features, which is essentially what we're here to talk about. As you can clearly see, the entire character is being portrayed by nothing more than an extreme close-up of a single hand toying with a sword. But even though this is all you have to work with, you very much do get a sense of the character above and beyond just his words. Now the next scene I want to discuss is technically a bit graphic, so if you're made uncomfortable by sexual activity, now's your chance to turn off the video and go run, hide, and cry. It's an excerpt from the film The Master, written and directed by Paul Thomas Anderson. The specific scene in question is between Philip Seymour Hoffman and Amy Adams. In the film, they are a long-time married couple, and in the scene before this, there was a big party with friends and colleagues, and Philip got extraordinarily drunk, and while it isn't explicitly shown, was being quite sexual. The scene that follows is this. Now, I know that we can see their faces in the mirror in front of them, but they were mostly covered by the backs of their own heads and don't really do much in showing us their facial expressions. Even when we do see bits and pieces of them here and there, they're not the focal point of the scene. The main point I want to emphasize is Amy Adams' arm here. She could have just put her arm on his back, but instead she uses it fully. She grabs him, she holds him, it moves around and it stays still. In fact, I dare say that arm is the most expressive thing in this scene. The way her muscles tense and flex, the way she both cradles and supports him while simultaneously holding him down, subjugating him. In this scene, Amy is totally and completely dominating him, all while making him feel loved and catering to his needs. It's a very strange duality, all built and supported on that arm there. Without looking at their faces, without them moving all that much, with nothing but a little bit of dialogue, that arm, and some shoulder movement, an entire scene is constructed that not only stands up, but has huge emotional impact on the characters, their plot, and the audience's connection with them. The third and final acting from the back scene that we're going to talk about is from the film Mr. Turner, written and directed by Mike Leigh. And I apologize in advance, but I'm fairly sure I'm pronouncing that name wrong, but it's spelled like this. In this scene, Mr. Turner, who is played by Timothy Spall, another name I'm probably pronouncing wrong, is being talked to by his wife, Sarah Danby, who is played by Ruth Sheen, about his missing his daughter's funeral. Mr. Turner is a man who hides all emotion. He does not ever show what he's feeling to anyone ever. While this is not 100% true, for those who have not seen the film, it is good enough to suffice for this conversation. The scene is shot from behind Mr. Turner, showing his wife, his other daughters, and his housekeeper. Throughout the scene, Mr. Turner barely moves at all. His head, his shoulders, and everything and anything else that his family can see are all completely still. Meanwhile, behind his back, his hands show us exactly what he's really feeling. They twitch, they squirm, they clasp at each other and flap about, and finally, they tense up so much that it can arguably be qualified as a form of self-abuse. This scene is the most emotionally impactful of the three, and is even more emotionally impactful than most scenes in most films in general. The stakes are high. His daughter is dead. He was not around for her funeral, and his family was already at odds with him. Now, they've fully given up. The character is portraying two emotions at once, both a stone wall lacking in any heart or sympathy, and also a deeply feeling, deeply caring individual. We, the audience, are able to see both these sides of him at once. One acted out with his hands behind his back, and the other acted out through the use of his silhouette. Acting from the back in this scene serves a purpose above and beyond a mere cinematic aesthetic. It actively keeps some of the characters in the dark, while simultaneously allowing the audience to take in the full picture. No other angle could have accomplished this. The only alternative would have been a series of cuts between different angles, shots of his wife, shots of the maid, of Mr. Turner's face, close-up of his hands, and so on and so forth. But this would have completely clashed with the character's slow and deliberate nature, as well as the atmosphere of the rest of the film, creating something that, while filled with more detail and fuller coverage, would have been lacking in the eloquence and poignancy of the scene as it is. Yet despite all of this, the vast majority of directors would never have ever even thought to shoot a scene like this in the first place, and most of those who did would have simply written it off as a terrible idea. But here it is. Through the use of his silhouette, we can see him as his family sees him, cold and unmoving. Through the use of his hands, we see him as he is, horribly wounded and vulnerable. This duality is made perfectly visible by an absolutely superb acting from the back. Acting from the back, as it stands today, may be a niche concept that most people fail to notice, even when it's in front of their faces. But it is not without its own beauty, significance, and little piece of cinematic magic. It's highly skilled acting, coupled with highly skilled directing, and merged with highly skilled cinematography. All aspects of craft and artistry coming together for a moment to remind us this is cinema. you.